All right, this next article is about the Chini by-election. So the Pekan Parti Pribumi Bersatu Malaysia division will be mobilised to support their candidate. And this by-election will be the first for Bersatu under the Perikatan National Government. So why is this seat under so much scrutiny, considering it's Perikatan Nationals versus two other independent challengers with no Pakatan connection?
Actually, I wouldn't say it's under much scrutiny at all. I think, in fact, everyone's attention is drawn elsewhere. Partly due to COVID, but a lot of other reasons as well. But also because I think in the Chini by-election, you have a Barisan National candidate under Perikatan National against two independents. And the thing that the seat is a Barisan National stronghold. I think ever since the seat was created in the 90s, it's always been a BN stronghold. They're very, very strong, very popular in this seat. And I guess many people just I would assume that they're gonna win, because even in GE14, when we saw many other seats falling, Chini was great. I mean, BN, I think the late assembly person, he won the seat by 4,600 majority in a 20,000 plus seat. With 20,000 plus voters, which is a very big majority given it was three-corner-fied, and I think you had PAS and Bersatu.
Yeah.
And now all those parties are on one side, right? So, of course, you have the combined strength. How can you not win? So I think many people, probably pundits, or even for me, I would expect them to win quite handsomely, especially when you have everyone, working together. Bersatu and PAS both time. Now they're all on the same side.
Yeah.
So I don't actually think there's much scrutiny per se, because I don't think the independents can go against such a strong front.
There's just been a lot of talk and a lot of media coverage on it, I suppose, because it is the first one since the change of government, right?
Oh yeah.
Now, there's a promise of 10 new telecommunications towers by MCMC to improve the internet connectivity there in Chini. How is this promise important to the voters of this by-election?
Well, based on the report, it's to improve internet access, provide 4G, and I think there are a lot of Felda settlers there, so I assume the internet in a rural area wouldn't be that great. So that's the point, lah. They technically they should do that for the whole country, not just Chini. But I guess the timing of the announcement, of course, is interesting. We have a Chini by-election, and they're announcing 10 towers for Chini at the same time. So of course, this raises questions about whether this is campaigning, is this proper, is this fair? In the past, you've seen Harapan do it as well when they were in government. They would go to Tanjung Piai or they would go to Kimanis, and they would, announce millions and millions of worth of ringgit of projects and allocations. BN did it as well during GE14. And I guess the problem here is it creates an uneven playing field. When you have the opposition candidate, or now in this case, an independent candidate, no party, there's no way they can promise this sort of thing. There's no way they can promise government resources and, 10 telecommunications towers. So, based on what Bersih says about, Bersih at the NGO says about, election campaigning using government resources, it is not illegal. There's no law against it. It's not an election offense, but it's unfair. When you talk about free and fair elections, this is not very fair, because what you're essentially doing is you are using government resources paid by taxpayers' money, like you and me, and you're using it for a party purpose or using it for a political purpose, right? Because you're trying to win an election here. So, maybe is that even proper? Is that fair? So I think that is the issue. And once again, not illegal, but highly unethical.
All right, let's get to our next article. Election Commission Chairman Dato' Art Harun has been tipped to become the new Dewan Rakyat Speaker. Now, in your opinion, Annabelle, what are your thoughts on this appointment based on historical evidence? Do you think Art Harun is the right candidate?
I don't have historical evidence, but I can tell you what I observed, during his time as EC chief. So he's only been in the post for less than 2 years. I think he was appointed September 2018. So he really hasn't been there that long. But I remember, I was covering one of the talks, one of the forums. He was there, and he really positioned himself as someone who was really championing reforms, electoral reforms, of course, with EC chief. And he was telling the public to make noise and at the time it was, the Harapan government uncomfortable if you want to see or you want to expedite reforms. So he strikes, I guess he comes across as that kind of guy who really wants reforms, wants change. And that's always good, right? Especially if you also want those things. But in terms of how he performed as the EC chief, because that's all we have to go on, with right now. I think he really used the many by-elections that we saw after GE14 as a way to slowly introduce or implement reforms. So some of these reforms included providing more polling stations for those who were elderly, those who had special needs. So that was really nice. I think he extended the voting times as well, and that gave people, I guess, more opportunity to vote. He introduced, and he really welcomed election observers as well to make sure, one of the issues I think the EC faced was a real PR crisis right after the GE14. They really wanted people to believe in them again. The public confidence was low. They wanted to improve that. And he really tried to work on that. He allowed election observers to come. He allowed video recording of all the voting streams. That's really showing people that, we have nothing to hide. And I think he tried to, present the results as fast as possible. He didn't want people to have to wait for the results. So I think, and also I think he tried really, really hard. People were accusing him of being pro-Harapan, but I think he tried really hard to present himself as someone who was fair to all parties, especially when he tried to roll out the Undi 18, the initiatives, which are still not done yet. That he's still in the process of doing automatic voter registration. He really, as far as I know, he engaged with parties, from all political parties, government, opposition, anything. And I think that was really important to try and restore public confidence. And but it's a real shame, I really think he hasn't finished what he set out to do. That's been less than 2 years, and then you want to move him to the Dewan Rakyat, which is, there's so many issues there, of course. But I don't know. I feel like people will really miss him at the Election Commission because he was really different. He was a breath of fresh air. He was not from the civil service, right? He was quite a high-profile lawyer who was very outspoken about election issues, human rights issues. So and he had represented people on election petitions before. So I think I think it would be nice to see him finish some of those reforms before he goes now.
Yeah, because right now they're saying trying to find an elections commission chairman to replace him.
Yes,
they have exhausted all means already, and it's an uphill task.
Yeah, and then he was halfway through. I don't even know where. I don't know how long his term was for, but it's less than 2 years. You can't do everything in less than 2 years. You change a system that has been around for so long in less than 2 years.
Now, Annabelle, how strategic is this move, though, to change the Parliament Speaker ahead of this 13 July Parliament sitting?
So it depends strategic for whom, of course.
Yeah.
But according to Deputy Speaker Ngah Khaw Meng, he told us meaning Malaysiakini, that this has never happened before, for a sitting Prime Minister to request or apply, submit a speaker and a deputy speaker, because it's Tan Sri Muhammad Arif and also YB Ngah, to leave, right? Because technically typically you only change speakers in 3 occasions, 3 situations, which is they pass away, they resign, or you dissolve parliament and you call for elections. And none of those things I think are going to happen. We don't foresee those 3 things happening. So, and you're supposed to give members of parliament 14 days to nominate a new person. So you're not supposed to just replace and change them on the spot, as far as I understand it, right? So that is not really per convention. But also we know, if you want to speculate about why and all that kind of stuff, they were appointed by the previous administration, so that could be one of the issues. But the second issue is, I think the speaker has also accepted several motions of confidence or no confidence against the prime minister. And I think one of the former ministers, YB Liu Rui Kiong, who is a former law minister, he basically said that this is possibly unconstitutional because you have a personal interest or vested interest in making sure they are replaced. That was his view. So you could argue that, but I guess it's not that unconstitutional because it was allowed. So strategic or not strategic, I don't think it's illegal. I mean, because they allowed the motion to be submitted, and we'll see whether it's tabled. But yeah, there seems to be. This parliament sitting will be very interesting. That's for sure.
Yeah, but earlier you did mention that Art Harun is. All right, this next one, very recent, Beijing imposed a wide-reaching national security law on Hong Kong, which many fear could be used to override existing legal processes and erode the city's civil and political freedoms. So why did Beijing impose this new security policy?
Well, I think this comes after months and months. I think last year we saw Hong Kong was just protest every day. Right, so this comes definitely after that. Many people have said that this is a way for Beijing to really control what is going on and make sure that the protests don't happen again, or at least they can do something about it when it happens. But with any law, it depends how it's being used. I think it was passed on July 1st or a day before that.
Yeah.
And immediately the next day, we already saw protests.
Mm-hmm.
And I think 10 people, according to the South China Morning Post, 10 people were arrested under this new law. So I think the law is interesting because it criminalizes secession, subversion of the central government, which is the Chinese government, terrorism, and collusion with foreign or external forces. And I think secession is what stands out to me, because in a lot of the protests, they call independence protests, right? So they want to be independent of China, which is secession. So, a lot of people were looking at, maybe that is going to be used against that. And some other features of the law, I think they would need Hong Kong to set up an office to deal with national security cases. It would allow the chief executive, in this case, Carrie Lam, to appoint judges to hear these national security cases. This could be seen as judicial interference. I think judicial independence is one thing Hong Kong has always wanted to maintain. And it looks like this law could erode that. And also, I thought it was interesting because Beijing now has the power to not just create this law, pass it, but also have the power to interpret this law however it likes. So I can imagine that there could be some opposition to this. And already there has been opposition to this. You see, I think the UK and the US, they're already tabling motions to discuss whether this is, democratic or not, whether it's fair or not. Yeah.
Well, to the pro-democracy camp in Hong Kong, they think that this is like the death of the one country, two system promise that China gave to them when the UK handed Hong Kong over. But now it seems like Hong Kong is like one of the states of China if it's being controlled by China in that sense.
Well, the name is still Special Administrative Region, right? SAR. And Carrie Lam, the Hong Kong chief exec, has promised that this will be not the case, that they will still be autonomous, that the crimes won't be that law won't be abused, the crimes where they use it for will be clearly defined. But like all laws, like our Sedition Act as well, it's really depending on how they use it. And we'll have to see, I guess, how they use this new law. And but so far we've seen a lot of opposition to it, the opposition parties in Hong Kong, the pro-democracy legislators. The UN Human Rights Council has also issued some warnings about it. So whether or not it really truly erodes this one country, two systems, we'll see, I guess, in the coming months. The fact that they rolled it out before July 1st, which is, and July 1st, if I'm not mistaken, is the day when
the UK gave it back to
UK.
The handover happened.
And every year you see protests on that day because they want to be independent, right? So.
But the collusion bit, though, it's been nothing but, if you actually see the protests, you'd see nothing but Union Jack flags and American flags there. So that's already right there. You see like the one of the issues right there with the new security law.
Could be, but I'm no expert in Hong Kong law or whatever's happening. I'm just an observer. But I imagine the secession bit will be quite obvious because with we've seen the protests, they all want independence from China. So yeah, I have a feeling that might be more of a concern. I mean, the collusion, they would have to prove that, I imagine. I've just had a glance of the law. I haven't studied it properly.
Yeah.
But yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's quite wide-ranging, right? It covers everything.
Yeah, but I
So-
don't know about the one country, because I think they will have to maintain two systems, because the Hong Kong dollar, you can't just get rid of that because it's such a powerful currency.
Actually, that's interesting because, okay, I can't remember. I don't know who to cite at this point, but Hong Kong used to be very important for China as like a business, you know, the gem, the business
Yeah,
kind of.
finance hub, right? Yeah.
But over the years, I don't think that is the case anymore. You know, you have Shanghai, you have Beijing, you have Guangdong, you have all these different.
And they move it to
all these different
Shenzhen now,
business
yeah.
centers. Yeah, Shenzhen, right? And I don't think Hong Kong is that, you know, that not to say not important, but I don't think they contribute that much in terms of GDP or in terms of you know, how much they actually generate. I don't think it's that huge. It's perhaps a symbol more than actual dollars. Because China itself is doing pretty well. I mean, I don't think we need Hong Kong per se. But this is more of control, right? Because protests, we've seen, you know, Beijing is not a fan of protests, of course. And they haven't been able to control what happened last year.